So welcome and thank you all for joining us. For those who don't know me, my name is Sharon Knighton. I'm sure a lot of you already have joined one of our webinars or been to one of our events, but it's always good to do a little bit of an intro. I'm a founder and managing director of People Mode. And welcome to our webinar today, which is all about retention. And I think it's a pretty hot topic out there at the moment. Just letting you know that this session will be recorded, and if you would like, a copy can be sent out to you at the end of the event. So I would like to begin firstly by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting today, or where I am, and to pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. And so I'm in Brisbane, and the First Nations people here are the Turrbal people and the Jagera people of the south side of the river. So I'd like to extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who might be joining us today. So retention, I guess it's no secret that staff retention is one of the most important factors in building and running a successful organisation, and high employee turnover rates are very disruptive and costly to both the productivity and the overall success of an organisation. So while we might be able to attract people in the door with pay and perks and lots of promises, we're seeing data at the moment showing that this is not encouraging them to stay. So we're seeing both a decline in retention and performance, and DEI in particular, DEI targets are slipping, and stress and burnout are rising. So burnout in particular, I wanted to mention because it's a term that I'm hearing a lot about at the moment. But we'll talk about that in a little moment, because firstly, I would like to welcome and introduce Alex Glassy, and Alex is joining us all the way from Vancouver Island in Canada. Alex is a co-founder and chief innovation officer of Conductor Software, and he's also the founder of the Circular CEO. He's an author, speaker, and facilitator. So, Alex, I'd like to welcome you. I know that you've been out and about in the wilds of Vancouver Island, so I'm glad to see that you've returned safe and sound and you haven't had any run-ins with any large furry animals such as a bear.
Well, thanks a lot, Sharon. It's great to be here. Great to be back safely. And we're just going out again. You can see I've got my summer shirt on, so do not adjust your set. The blue, this is the real color. Yeah, we're going out again for a couple of weeks off grid with our ocean kayaks. So if anyone has been to Vancouver Island, you'll have a sense of what we're about to. And if you had never been here, then what is it? Alone? Is that the show? That's yeah. So watch an episode or two of Alone and you'll know what I'll be doing for the next 2 weeks. So it's great to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So yeah, we're both here to have a chat about retention. We know it's a global issue, but we're talking specifically about what's happening in the Australian market, as the majority of our people that will be joining us are from this country. I've got a couple of little slides that if you can bring them up, Alex, that would be great. And I'm just going to talk through. So the first one is specifically about retention in Australia. And
Sharon, can I just pause right there? I want to make sure that, as you and I always do, it's not you and I pontificating. This is a nice small group, so we have an opportunity to really hear from everybody. And so I just want to make sure that everyone knows where their keyboard is and where the chat feature is on Zoom. And if you could just type something in that says hi and yo, Steve, and maybe very quickly why retention is, or staff turnover is, at the top of your mind today. And let's make sure that everyone, there we go. Christian's here, Karen Tong, awesome.
Absolutely. And it is all about, that's the joy of having these smaller groups, is that people can actually jump in and ask questions as we go. And we will have a formal Q&A section at the end, but certainly feel free to ask questions via the chat function as we go through.
That's great.
So
That's
if
great.
we have a look at what's actually happening in Australia, and this is based on a couple of different reports that I've been looking at, we have, according to Gallup, 67% of Australian workers are quiet quitting, with 43% actively looking for a different job. So these are quite, they're quite scary statistics, I guess, if you're in an organisation and you're trying to get the best out of your people, and you look at statistics like this and think, wow, this could be happening in my organisation. The other important thing to note here is that the number one reason for people leaving is being stated as engagement and culture. And in fact, 3 times as many people are leaving their job due to this factor. Either engagement and culture or well-being and work-life balance reasons, compared to the number of people who predominantly left for pay or benefits. So these are things that the organisation could actually improve in order to retain staff. And that, I think, is the really important thing here. If you look at Microsoft's Work Trends Index, 62% of Australian employees are experiencing burnout compared to a global average of 48%. So for some reason in Australia, we seem to be having more people identifying as saying that they're feeling burnt out. And that's been backed up as well by statistics from Melbourne University saying that, over half the people that were surveyed in that report were feeling exhausted. So again, really interesting, or, could be quite concerning statistics if we look at those. So, okay. And when we look at employee engagement, we're seeing there the quiet quitting percentage. So it's up in Australia compared to globally. And then you've got, obviously, your people that are just going out and getting new jobs. So people are saying it is a good time to be looking for a job. But beyond that, I'm hearing stories of people who are just leaving. They're saying, you know what, I'm feeling burnt out. I don't have the capacity to even find another job. I want to step away and I need some time. And this is not just a one-off thing that I'm hearing it a lot in different organisations. And I've been speaking to HR leaders who are identifying this as a concern in their organisation and saying, what can we do? We are offering them additional leave. We're offering them part-time. But at that stage, they're saying, you know what, I don't want even that. I want to step away. So how do we help leaders identify these signs earlier and be able to have conversations earlier to actually help these people? Because I think it's heartbreaking. You know how difficult it must be for people to leave, a stable income, a stable regular income, and actually go out there and say, I don't even want another job. I just need some time out. Like the level of burnout that people must be feeling for that to happen, I think, quite frankly, it's really concerning. And Alex, if we just look at the next screen, what we're also seeing is it's really concerning again, because we're losing diversity. Statistics are showing that more women and minority leaders are impacted by this, whether it's by burnout or whether it's just work-life balance is no longer working for them and they're stepping away from roles. And again, it's really heartbreaking to see these statistics. And I know for a lot of organisations that have worked really hard on having DEI in their organisations, and to see these kind of statistics, again, would be very concerning. So we understand that, organisations that have greater diversity usually have greater success as well. So this is a concern for organisations, and it's a concern for people, because statistically we're seeing that a lack of trust and, unfortunately, sometimes ineffective leadership are driving diversity out the door. So how do we help support leaders to target some of these areas and have conversations earlier and be able to support their people? And that's what I wanted to have this conversation with you today, Alex. I know that this is an area that you're particularly passionate about, as am I, and I thought it's very timely for us to start having this conversation.
Yeah, great. These are, just as you said, for someone to leave a job without having another job to go to is an enormous thing, an enormous decision to make. And so things must really not be going so well over here. There must really be something to drive us out there. As you know, I've just done I've got a couple of projects going on right now where we're actively looking at this, and I'm going to share some of the results of some work we've done recently with you. Let me get into my agenda here. And I hope I'm seeing some of the comments come in. By the way, if we've got a couple of, we're referring to a couple of articles here, and Steve has already asked, Steve Sander, do you have the demographics of the survey group? So we can share those articles with you afterwards for sure. If you've got any other questions or anything else, pop them in there and get ready, because I'll be asking you all some questions in just a minute. So here's what we're going to talk about in the next 30 minutes. Why is it so important? Is turnover rate a single number? How does time play a factor? Does it play a factor? What can we do about stuff? And I'll just run you through a case study of how a high-tech firm who had some concerns wanted to just do a deeper dive into what was going on inside their organization. And I think there's some lessons there for all of us. So let's get going. So why is retention so important? So take 20 seconds and let's just familiarize yourself with this, and then I'll go through them. So the cost to replace people, Gallup would say that it's anywhere from 1.5 to 2 times annual salary. Of course, it's going to change whether it's at what level of the organization they're at, but that's a rough rule of thumb to use. The disruption, that's a lot of, in a tech firm that you're going to see average salary there, $90,000 US. Per year. And so the average cost to replace one person is, $180,000 US. That is a ton of money. Then there's the disruption to my team and what it's trying to do to the organization, to customers that I might be having relationships with if I'm the one that's leaving, with suppliers. Maybe I've got supplier relationships to whatever project is going on. If I've got an organization where I've got high degree of turnover on some particular projects, my projects can slow. So there's an impact on productivity, on sales, on marketing, on getting anything done. I've now got less people that are able to do that particular work, and it's going to slow everything down. And then as new people come on board, I've got to take people who are supposed to be working on projects to help to onboard these people and get them up to speed. And that can take anywhere from a month to 3 months, 6 months, up to a year, depending on the specialty of the work. Risk of loss of IP. So tech firms, they got people with a lot of knowledge in their head. Those people walk out the door. A lot of stuff goes with them. Elon Musk just recently complaining that some of the people that left Twitter going over to Meta to create a competitive offering, he's complaining that IP is being unfairly taken from him. We can talk about Elon a little bit later if we want to, but
perhaps he shouldn't have fired everyone when he took over.
Perhaps he shouldn't have fired everyone. That's exactly right. And other important relationships. I know someone in the UK was working on large deals, large government deals, left that organization, and that organization is now really suffering because those relationships are now need to be rebuilt, which is going to take some time, which impacts cash flow. So enormous impact. The reputational impact. I'm working with a firm in Canada, and they used to have all kinds of people applying for summer intern positions, and that is not happening anymore. Zero. The relationships that they have in the local community is now been besmirched And so this glass door effect, these younger people using technology to go, I wonder if I should go work for Acme Corporation. Oh, maybe not, because people can go on to Glassdoor and they can share, ex-employees can go and share what they think about what their experience was at Acme. It's a strong organizational health indicator. If you've got high or rising staff turnover, it's probably a symptom that all is not well in some aspect of your organization. So it's an indicator that senior execs should have on their monthly or quarterly dashboards. Is there anything else that I've missed? And again, if there's anything I've missed, please type it in. Looks like I can see a few of you on the screen. Nick's starting to type. Hey, Nick. Yeah, remuneration pressure. So Steve, can you, what does it do? Is it creates upward remuneration pressure, downward remuneration pressure? Can you expand on that just a little bit?
Yeah, so obviously as people leave, the impression that people have is that they leave for more money. In this case, we're talking about the fact that they're leaving because they're burnt out, but then the acquisition of new client or new employees, there is this tendency to feel that you need to put more carrot on the table, so increase the salaries, and that has all sorts of pressure on the business, internal inequity. It's a nightmare.
Absolutely right. Yeah, and using salary as a or remuneration as a compensatory mechanism for other deficiencies in the organization, which is again something that we probably don't want to do because of all the reasons that you've just said. Yeah, great. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that come to mind for me. What's interesting is that people also use the opportunity to put pressure by staying and actually put pressure on. They'd say, "Oh, I'm going to leave." And this is maybe a little bit to the side of the conversation, but there are people who actually stay inside an organisation because they're comfortable. They don't have to do anything, and so they're ineffective. They're not engaged, but they'll stay forever if they're not given some opportunity to develop. And some of the larger client organisations I work with, that's what we said. We've done, the culture surveys and had a look inside of these things. And there's almost a window at 5 years where people go, "I'm frustrated now. I can't go any further. I'm not really going to hang." And they'll either leave or they stay, resign themselves to the fact that they're not going to have opportunity, and then become ineffective. So right. It's just what comes to mind.
We refer to that as quiet quitting. So that is part of those statistics. Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole organization as a whole starts to become less efficient.
Costs go up.
Absolutely right. Yeah, we're huge fans of, and you won't see all of that today, but we're huge fans of senior management having a holistic perspective. They really need to have a dashboard that doesn't just show sales going up and profitability at the bottom. They really need to be thinking about these other things and retention and productivity and because all of those things actually make up, they fall to the organization's bottom line. Let me keep going. Yeah, presenteeism. I see in the got one eye over here, one eye over here, one eye on you. Let me keep going. So how do your organizations? So this is a question to you. How do your organizations respond to staff turnover or your clients? So somebody leaves, and what do? Meh, or they didn't fit. It wasn't our type of person. They couldn't take the pressure. These are comments that I actually heard in a call this morning, on my first call at 8 a.m., talking with a potential client. There's nothing we can do about it. I mean, they're gone. So what can we do? Turnover is a natural thing. People come and people go. Our turnover numbers are the same as, our industry. They're the same as they were last year. They're the same as, some external reference, a chief competitor. Is that what you're hearing? Or are you hearing them go, "Uh-oh, we didn't want to lose Sam. We need to think about this. What's going on?" How do you?
I'm sorry, Alex. I'm hearing stories where people are wanting to hold on to key staff, but as I said, they're leaving because of burnout. And by the time they have that conversation, it's too late.
Yeah, it is too late. And so you're seeing Steve Sanders says currently they're looking to see if they can improve efficiency and make up the leaving employee with technology. In other words, can I replace 3 people with 2 chatbots? Nick is saying there's some more maturity out there. They're really actually trying to get ahead of the curve, which is why, Nick, you're here and why other people are here. We try to investigate why they're leaving so we can improve the business. It's awesome. So these are fairly traditional things of doing. It was the exit interview, which my sense is that it happens a little too late in the game. And as people are going out, in particular, if they're not feeling pretty good, some of the things they'll tell you might be skewed. It's like when people don't buy your stuff, they never tell you the real reason, right? There's but let's keep going. So all
Alex,
full range.
can I just to pop a little anecdotal evidence in there? I had a conversation with a client last week, and someone has left their organisation, and on the way out has given them a 4-page exit interview with a whole breakdown of everything that they've been going through. And as you say, it's all way too late. But it's obviously that person was in a lot of pain, and to leave a 4-page exit interview is, it's really upsetting for the managers who were trying to do their best to retain people.
But that's gold. That should be treated with respect and reverence, because someone went out of their way, didn't have to. They're already out the door, and they thoughtfully said, "Here's why." And you can't fix my issues because I'm out the door. But my goodness, here is something that you could use, hopefully, to resolve and fix some of the other things that are affecting other people. Yeah, good. Wow, great. 4 pages.
Yeah.
All right, so let's keep going. Is turnover rate a single number? So is it like, it's 10% of people leave here every year? That's kind of what we know, and it kind of fluctuates a little bit, but other than that, we're good. Or can we look a little further? So let's take a look at is it a single number, or can we dig deeper, and are there multiple numbers? So why do people leave? This is from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion report that DDI put out just recently. We discovered a strong this is DDI, discovered a strong association between the intent to leave and a lack of trust in their organization. Let me keep going, because we have more information from Gallup. You may not be able to see this, so I'll read some of these things out. But happy to share this with you. This is their 2023 employee retention and attraction. And the reason I kind of set it up this way is these 2 columns here have lots and lots of reasons that are not pay and benefits. Oftentimes we think, particular senior leadership, hey, listen, I'm all about the money. I want to make more money, right? And I think that people are going to come and go because of money. And it turns out that if people are forced to pick a single thing, which is what is on this page, they will pick things like advancement, development, or career opportunities. There were unrealistic job expectations. The work itself no longer interested me, not treated with respect, workplace culture. Like this, not treated with respect. 5% of people, out of all the things they could have selected, 5% of people chose that as their one thing that they wanted to talk about. And you'll see that the way that Gallup has put this together, 40% of these things are engagement and culture. 26% of them are well-being and work-life balance. And as we look down some of the things here, like relocation or personal reasons, work-life balance, physical working conditions, it's like, why? Like, what's going on? Did they not raise their hand? Did they not let anyone know? Did we not know about these things, that we couldn't have addressed them before it actually got to the point where someone decided to leave? So, and then down here, 9% direct supervisors or managers, which is lower than I had expected, but still a significant piece. Let's keep going. So that's what people said as they were going out. I think that this one is probably more reflective of what actually is going on. What do people want in their next job? Now, this is multiple choice. So this is not just one choice, you're allowed multiples. Greater work-life balance and better personal well-being. 63% of people said this was very important to them. Allow me to do what I do best. 57% of people. Greater stability and job security, 56% of people. Yes, of course, 60% of people want significantly to increase income and improve benefits package, but it's tied with these other things. And then, of course, down at the bottom here, moving away from a bad manager or leader. I'm actually not moving towards something better. I'm moving away from something that was worse. And I think that when we think about manager, keep that in mind, because even as you go back to the previous one and you think about, for example, respect, not treated with respect, workplace culture, lack of honesty and transparency, lack of recognition for contributions, these are directly related to my immediate supervisor. I think my immediate supervisor is all over this page, all over this page. Let me keep going. All right, so we're still thinking about, is staff turnover just a single number? If we were to take a look at turnover and group it by gender, age, any of these things, would that be helpful? So the DDI report, for example, talks about women and ethnic minorities and younger people. And in the case study, you'll see us doing that. Are there one or two here that, and again, type it in or shout it out if you've got access to your mic. Are there any in here that you think are particularly useful to zoom in on when you're thinking about staff turnover?
Alex, I think age is particularly interesting at the moment with the generational clash in the workforce and the difference in, perceived work ethic across the different generations. So that'd be interesting.
Yeah. Hey, Sharpie. Are you just saying that because you've crossed an age threshold recently?
I'm having a midlife, mate.
You and me both, brother.
And I have teenage kids, which is causing me great stress.
Yeah, that's great. You don't have any gray hair. Go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, one of the comments that gets made is about the lack of resilience in the current group, in the younger age group. I think they're talking about millennials, but whatever that means, to be honest, I don't really buy into the whole labelling thing, but certainly comments about the lack of resilience for younger people in terms of their work roles. There was another study, and again, I can't remember what it was when it was done. It was only a few within the last few years. That also said that younger people are seeking different things than the generation before. So they're seeking connection, they're seeking mentoring, they're seeking guidance, and they're definitely thinking of a faster track to either the next layer up or beyond, where the patience needed to actually spend time in the role to get the depth of experience needed is sometimes missed by them. So that's just some of the stuff that came through this report that was going into talking about the difference in the generational attitude.
Yeah, very interesting, isn't it? So you're echoing Steve's comment about age. Steve Sandor, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just find it surprising and interesting that our generation, so I'm 60-something, 67, but people from the 50s onwards, I think it's very surprising to me that when you're in a management position and you're hiring younger people, that you don't actually know that they're different to you. I've got adult children and they're different to me. So how I parent was different. I was parented, it was a different world. So I just think there's a lack of appreciation at the manager level, and I agree with you, Alex, that this is the managers of people are all over this problem. And if you cared about your people and not the bottom line, then you would have a completely different outcome with the engagement that you have with people, rather than, and you know, here's your desk, here's the LMS, I'll see you on Monday, good luck. That's, you know, that's the use of technology and the abuse of it. So yeah, it's something that just puzzles me when people go, I've got young kids, young people who don't have the same work ethic as me. And you go, yeah, but you know that, right? You know, why are we surprised?
Yeah, no, I totally get it. And these are the same people, though, that will tell their kids, you know, do as I say, you know, not as I do. Like there's all that kind of top down linear leadership, old style, right? Listen, I'm going to tell you, I wasn't going to do this, but I'm going to tell you, I was in a meeting this morning, and I'm going to quote from you. Somebody saying, I was in a, not me, this was someone who I'm coaching, said, I was in a meeting this morning with senior executives, and we're talking about there's one really high potential female leader, and she's having a couple of issues, and one middle-aged white guy, I hate to say it because I look in the mirror every day and see one looking back at me, but one middle-aged white guy says, I think she's too fragile and emotional. I don't think she's going to fit in. I wish she would just man up. And it just goes, I'm just going to let that steaming. Go ahead.
I wonder who the fragile, insecure one is.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah, listen, we know this stuff. I'm glad that we're all kind of aware of it and much more enlightened. Let me keep going because I'm on a clock. Sharon's going to give me the hook. I don't think turnover is a single number. So here's our overall staff turnover. I think that as we start to think about it more thoughtfully, you can immediately start to see that that single number breaks down into at least two numbers. And there is healthy staff turnover. Listen, there's always going to be staff turnover, and you want some staff turnover. You will have really, really great people who are just going to be given an opportunity that we can't give them, and they're going to leave. And God bless them. Let them go and do great things. And maybe one day they'll come back to us and bring that experience back with them. So there's people whose spouses will go across the country. There's all kinds of good and healthy reasons why people will want to leave us. But there are a lot of other less healthy reasons, and I call these unnecessary. And you'll see why it's unnecessary, because it's an unnecessary cost, performance drain, risk to IP, all the rest of that stuff, and we can quantify that. And then I think as we look at these things more deeply, and we've talked about some of these things already, gender and age, for example, that we'll start to identify different factors, and we'll walk you through this when we get into the case study in just a minute. So for sure, it's multiple numbers. Can time play a factor? This is very, very interesting. That we wait until the very end before we do an exit interview and say, oh, hey, you know, why are you leaving? What about us don't you like? When we should be thinking about things much, much earlier on. And there's three things I want to highlight. The one thing is, what's the best thing, is rising sentiment. We hired somebody, we brought him into the organization. When someone comes into a new organization, they are full of enthusiasm and brimming with like, let's go get them, show me where the ropes are, show me my job, show me my desk, all the rest of that stuff, right? And if we can hang on to that, then life is going to be good. We're going to get the best out of them, and that's really what our goal should be. However, let's say that things start to not go so well. Over the course of time, as reality hits in the first year or two or three, and I see falling sentiment, I thought that I could trust the organization to have my back. I thought my immediate leader would really, kind of look after me and help me kind of navigate this complex new organization and all of its challenges. But those things aren't happening. And as sentiment starts to fall, that falling sentiment is critical. It starts to lead to maybe there are better places. So falling sentiment is, and I'll show you one in particular in just a minute. Falling sentiment is a strong predictor in the work that we've done. We've seen a 35% prediction of in one of the falling sentiments, which I'll show you, to people leaving an organization. the opposite is rising sentiment. Things aren't so good. And this is the hope that I like to bring into the clients that we work with. Listen, things may not be so good, but we can actually get better. And as people see things get better, even over the course of 30 or 60 or 90 days, they immediately stop looking around. They go, oh, hope springs eternal. And I really like what I'm doing here. And the leaving and that whole shifting, that's a big friction piece I don't want to have to go through. So rising sentiment is our friend. Low things that they just chafe away at us. And again, they can cause us to leave. So time does play a factor. What we want to do is we want to get on the right side of this. The left side of this particular chart. We want to get the right side of time. So what can we do about it? Would we do anything about it? So if I were to tell you that Pat was thinking about leaving because the lack of working from home flexibility was making it difficult to look after their kids, would we do something about it? Pat's critical. We want Pat to stay. Would we do something about it? What if I were to tell you that Joe was thinking about leaving because they felt stuck in a dead-end job and haven't had training for 2 or 3 years? There's no apparent room to grow, never has a conversation about career development with their immediate supervisor. Is there something we can do about that? What if I were to tell you that Sam was thinking about leaving because they felt ignored and unheard? When they sit in meetings, they just get, middle-aged white guys are just talking over top of them while the extroverts are talking, but I'm an introvert and I think about things differently. If we could know these things, would we make changes? Would we sit down with these individuals and try to find ways? And I know that everyone in the room would put their hands up and say yes. I think our job for ourselves and for our own organizations and for our clients is to find out how we could do that. So let's walk through a case study. This is a high-tech firm, fairly recent numbers, 6 months old, in the US. And they were wondering if the organization was doing enough to keep younger staff and women. And so the first thing we did is we walked in and we did a survey, a psychological safety survey, just to assess, get the heartbeat. How are people feeling? How are people doing? And I always love to start off with this chart because it just shows that as soon as we start to dive into the numbers, we lose sight of people. So I always want to start off with a chart that shows, hey, every single one of these dots is an individual. And the high point up here is this is 100 out of 100. And the low point down here, this is 0 on the other side. And you can see that the median is 75. We've got some people who are doing pretty good from a psychological safety perspective. We have people that are not doing so well at all. We have some people who are doing awful. When you see purple, that's a warning sign. And in our experience, people with low psych safety or people who don't respond to surveys are significantly more likely to leave the organization in the coming 6 months, like way more likely to leave. Facebook would say that people who don't answer their annual surveys are 2.6 times as likely to leave the organization in the coming year. And we see that. We'd like to survey people more frequently than that, and we absolutely see that. Now, the good news is that these people are still here. And so now we have an opportunity to do something about it. When we take that same data and we group it by teams, so every row here is a team, every column here is a survey question or a topic, we start to see variances between the teams that can correlate with retention. And you'll also start to see variances in some of the questions that give you a deeper understanding of what's going on, what's causing this friction to occur in that particular team. So we know where something is going on and we know what's going on. And these are really, really great clues. Also, when you take a look at a question like E4, which is I get sufficient training to do my job well, you can see that it's being done poorly right across the organization. So there are things being done on an organizational perspective, policies and expenditures, investments that we're making that affect everybody for good or ill. When we take a look at the same teams and we take a look at the variances within teams, that's what we're seeing here. When you see numbers that are greater than 12, you start to see variances within teams, And that may start to suggest in groups and out groups, people may be feeling excluded. So we've got lower psych safety down here, and you can see that there's a team here which got huge 18.2. It's enormous variance within a team. There are at least 2 or 3 people down here that are actually feeling really unpsychologically safe. And when you start to drop below this line here or get close to it, you start to get a sense of that there's bullying or harassment, or there's something that's these people are really not doing well at all. And so what you can see just in these 2 charts is that team leaders who are responsible for the local culture, for that culture when we're in meetings and when we've got individuals that are looking for support, those team leaders are critically important. And what this data tells us is that there's there's no consistent leadership training across the organization, or human-oriented leadership training across this particular organization. Now what we're doing is we're grouping by age. So all the Steves that wanted to talk about age, here it is. And here's 10-year age groups. And at the bottom, we're showing the range. And you can see that the 20 to 29s, whoops, I'll just highlight this. The 20 to 29-year-olds, there's some big differences in S5, for example. I am confident taking a stand on things important to me. My skills are, which, listen, you can see why that might be important for younger people because they're typically new on the job. But this one right here, there's no excuse for it. My skills are recognized and valued by my manager. This is saying my skills are sometimes recognized and valued by my manager. It's much lower than other people, than older people. There's no reason why younger people who are new on the job, for example, shouldn't be feeling a sense of my skills for what they are recognized for what I'm doing by my manager. There's absolutely no reason for some of these things. And this is just a lack of, I think, a lack of training or a lack of old school thinking. I know the way I was taught to lead had no relation at all with people centric.
Alex, could I just ask a question on that? Is there a correlation between tenure and age in this example?
In this particular case, I'm not sure that I did that. I think there is, but I don't have a chart to show you, Nick. But that is work that we can do. Our tools do.
Because I think that would also have some relationship in terms of satisfaction or dissatisfaction in the amount of time a person's been in and around, you know?
Yeah.
So it would be interesting to cut it that way.
I totally agree with you. I've got a chart that's coming up, I think 2 charts from now that may show you some of that.
Thank you.
I also want to point out E2. So Nick, thanks for pausing me on this slide. And this E2 is work is allocated fairly in my team. I'm going to come back to this in just a minute, but keep an eye on it. I mean, look at this. I'm new on the job, or I'm younger, and I'm feeling this sense of unfairness. Unfairness is closer related to trust, and it is one of those things that chafes like crazy. In fact, E2, falling E2 is a very strong predictor that someone is going to leave the organization soon, in the next 6 months. Let me keep going. This is men and women. And what we've got here, this is across an organization. And what we're doing is we're comparing the female experience. Here's the questions down below. And here's the female experience in orange. Here's the male experience in gray. The bar chart down here shows the difference in points. And you can see that for much of it, it's the same. However, from about this point this way, you can see that it's significantly different. And we did it, and I wish I'd had this, Nick, because it goes right to your point. We then did the same thing by gender and then by tenure. And we could see that regardless of where the women were in their tenure compared to men of the same tenure, their psychological safety experience was less than men by a significant margin, by at least 10 or more points. In fact, it got worse in the 3rd to 5th year. It was like up to 14, 15, 16 point differences. So there's something going on here that's just chafing away at the experience. And this organization, remember, they were saying our younger people and our women, there's something going on there that might cause them to leave the organization. Women feel less able to influence decision-making than men. Women feel less comfortable than their male colleagues expressing opinions to their manager. women feel less comfortable asking their team members for help. These are just things that just absolutely, why would I want to work here? I can't be heard, can't get helped. My manager doesn't listen to me.
And sadly, it's something that I hear a lot when I have conversations in organizations too. So I'm getting that anecdotal evidence, and we say, look, 2023, I can't believe this is still happening, but
it's alive and well.
Absolutely.
So this is Nick, to your point about tenure. So what we were able to do then is we're trying to figure out, does a sentiment such as E2, work is allocated fairly on my team? When we take a look at that by tenure, it looks like it's fallen. So this is a tricky way. This is a little trick that we've used. We want to do longitudinal studies. We want to, do a survey every 6 months. And in organizations where we've done that, over the second and third and fourth survey, the richness of the data it becomes fabulous to work with, because you start to become much more predictive on individual topics. But if you have tenure, you can put the two together and you can start to get a sense of whether that is true or not. Now, listen, there's people going to have left the organization at certain points along the way. And so this may not be as bad, or it may be worse than it could otherwise have been. But this is an interesting curve. And we've run this across several organizations, and it seems to be pretty consistent on some of these questions. So this is just saying that this fairness of work allocation just doesn't get any better in this particular, or it seems to not be getting any better in this particular organization. And then the last piece I'll show you is a methodical approach to improving retention supports a deliberate strategy of improvement. And so what they had done is they've known that over the course of 2022 that their staff turnover is 8.2%. And what we did is we came along and we said, well, listen, we think we can separate that. That isn't just 8.2% of people that if you get 839 staff, that they're going to turn over 69 people, right, every year, 70 people every year. And there's nothing we can do about it. That's just the cost of doing business. It turns out that when you start to do the analysis, you can split that. Here's my Pink Floyd homage. And if you don't know Pink Floyd, who Pink Floyd is, or what album this is, please. Anyway, and it turns out that their group one, 14.3%, group two, 10.7%. And so you can do some calculations, some math, and you can figure out that there are 27 people that are unnecessary leavers, that their turnover rate is significantly higher than what we would call natural or normal, if you will. And then there's a cost to that. And the cost is significant. It's $5 million US, but it's $5 million US every single year that we don't address this. And so that should give us an opportunity then to go back and say the cost of remediating this, of addressing this, is going to be much less than that cost. We may not be able to get all 27 people, but we should be able to get some of them. And if we get some of them, what we're doing is, because we know that turnover can be an important indicator, is if we're improving retention, we're going to be improving other things as well that will lead to potentially higher performance, higher DEI, better leadership, all those other things. None of these things sit by themselves. And then finally, and I'm rushing a little bit, but so much to talk about, things to support a retention improvement strategy. And I'll just give you a minute here while I catch my breath.
Yes, I think it's really important to have these insights, and by doing this survey is a great way to actually see what is actually happening in your organisation, and it is based on how people are feeling and gives you an idea of, in terms of psychological safety, but it also breaks it down into those individual areas that can be addressed quite easily. And you and I, Alex, have talked a lot about this and the small things that leaders can do to actually improve an employee's experience incredibly. But if they don't know what's actually happening, because we don't have a crystal ball and we can't see inside people's heads, then it's almost impossible to actually make changes that are going to improve people's experience at work.
Well, the other thing is that they spend a lot of money on a scattergun approach, putting everybody through something rather than target very specifically where the energy and effort need to be, so they can miss that opportunity and in fact dilute the very thing they're wanting to achieve because of that scattergun approach.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and that leads into the last 2 points here, Nick. Organization level policies set the stage. And so we know as senior exec that we want to offer certain things. We want to offer free massages for all, for example. Whatever it happens to be, remuneration, retention, work from home, all these macro policies. And what we see, and I did not have the time to be able to share the data with you, but the data that we've got will show that organizational level policies will affect a lot of people's psychological safety, but within a narrower bound, within a 20 kind of point bound. So it's kind of broad impact and it helps to set the stage. And then what ends up happening is team leaders come along and they'll either use these policies and procedures and their listening skills and their human skills to reinforce the what we're trying to accomplish, or they'll undermine them. And so team leaders are acute. What they cause is good things get even better and bad things get even worse. And so what we see is 50-point psychological safety ranges, but across a narrower group of people. And again, this goes to minorities and some of these segments that have the voice or aren't being heard, and they're not being heard is because they're being blocked because of, for example, a particular leader. So these two things really must go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. But if you've only got one, then you really want to make sure your team leaders are skilled in the ways of talking to their staff in a way that helps them feel heard. Karen,
I think that goes to Christian's point that he put in the chat. It's about education and actually committing to the people that have the greatest level of influence are generally those frontline leaders. That's where they put a lot of energy. And what I've found is that the next layer up, so I work a lot in the resource sector across Australia and occasionally get overseas, but you're working with a group of people who are looking up to see what my next layer up are doing. And if they're not paying attention to what I'm being told to pay attention to, I'll pay attention to what they want. So it's a really interesting dynamic in terms of the relationship perspectives, even unconscious, and even the bias that they've got towards that.
Absolutely right. Senior management, that's point 3, which you just spoken to. Senior management must actively and visibly and consistently, right? As soon as they step away from it, then the ball drops, and we go back to our standard top-down performance orientation. Forget the people.
Yeah. You'd be very familiar, I'm sure, Alex, with the Bradley curve. And when you look at the Bradley curve, the bridge from compliance to collaboration is all about the engagement and the connection that people are making with their direct leader, or that they are making with them. And it's really something that I suppose I've spent 35 or 40 years working with in terms of human communication. It's the simple things done well that make a massive difference.
They absolutely do.
Stephen Covey Jr.'s book, The Speed of Trust, I think is something that's worth most of you having a quick look through for that.
Yeah, well done. Well said. Karen Jensen, you got your hand up. Very patient.
Yeah, look, I was just going to say, felt like we were beating up a bit on the poor older males, but I think, what we've seen and what's become really clear over the last couple of years for us is that this piece about the confidence, so regardless, between the different generations or the different genders or the different ages or even tenure, that confidence level, and that's been really surprising to a lot of leaders for them to have not really ever considered that. And so some of these differences really, really do come down to just a lack of confidence of being able to raise your voice or lean in or contribute in a way that people around you take for granted. And having that insight in and of itself can be incredibly powerful for a leader. It's nothing fundamental they need to change. It's just an awareness of how they can support building that confidence in their team. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I find it it's confidence, and it's also listening in conversations with one of our customers. I think, Karen, you might be familiar with this one. Leaders were going, well, we don't want to have kind of career related conversations with our organization because our organization is kind of, it's not growing, and so there's nowhere for people to go. And again, it was another tech firm, and so we really don't know how to answer it. And it turns out when you talk to the people on the teams, what they were really interested in doing was not necessarily going up the greasy pole, but actually having an opportunity to have more interesting experiences. So, hey, I'd like to work on that project, and then in 6 months, I'd like to work on that project. Right? I'd like to get a diversity of experiences to really flesh that out. Well, that's an easier conversation for a manager to have. So there's lots and lots of good things that can happen when we simply, as leaders, have the confidence to have these conversations with our staff. We're
Alex,
over.
we've run out of time.
Yeah, I know, as usual.
If you want to have an ongoing conversation or some more information about anything that we talked about today, then please feel free to reach out for a chat.